Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars through the main window when the strangest thing happened in his 20 years of space travel. The communication officer turned around with wide eyes and a look of complete confusion on her face. Lieutenant Amy Walsh had seen many things during their deep space missions, but nothing had prepared her for what just came through their quantum radio. The signal came from nowhere and everywhere at the same time. It bypassed all their security systems and appeared directly on their main screen without any warning. The message was clear and simple, but the implications made Jake's hands shake as he read it twice to make sure he understood correctly. The Galactic Council formally invites humanity to present themselves for evaluation as a potential member species. You have 30 Earth days to prepare a delegation and travel to Nexus Prime. Coordinates are attached. This invitation cannot be declined. Jake had heard rumors about the Galactic Council from other species they had encountered during their exploration missions. Ancient civilizations that had been ruling the galaxy for thousands of years. Species so advanced that they could destroy entire star systems with a thought. Nobody had ever seen them directly, and most people thought they were just stories told by drunk alien traders in the Outer Rim stations. The communication officer ran more scans on the signal but found nothing. It had appeared for exactly 30 seconds and then vanished without leaving any trace in their systems. The quantum signature was unlike anything in their databases, and the level of technology required to send such a message across the galaxy was beyond human understanding. Jake immediately sent word to Earth through their fastest communication relay. The message would take 6 days to reach home and another 6 for instructions to come back. That left them 18 days to prepare for whatever was waiting at the coordinates the Council had provided. While they waited for Earth's response, Jake studied everything they knew about the galaxy's older civilizations. The files were thin and mostly based on second-hand information from species they had traded with over the years. The Council was supposed to have 12 member species representing different aspects of galactic civilization. They maintained peace through a combination of overwhelming power and diplomatic tradition that went back 10,000 years. Earth's response came faster than expected. Instead of waiting for their regular communication window, they sent a priority burst transmission that cost more energy than most planets used in a year. The message was direct and came from the highest levels of human government. Ambassador Lisa Carter would lead the delegation to the Galactic Council. She was Earth's most experienced diplomat when it came to dealing with alien species, and had successfully negotiated treaties with 17 different civilizations. Her team would include Dr. Alan Brooks, who studied alien cultures and societies. Commander Kate Phillips would represent human military interests, and engineer Sam Rodriguez would showcase their technological achievements. The 4 delegation members met on the horizon 3 days later. They had been traveling through space to reach the meeting point at maximum speed. Lisa Carter was a small woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to see everything. She spoke quietly, but everyone listened when she talked. Dr. Brooks was younger and always carried a tablet full of notes about different alien species. He had spent his entire career studying how different civilizations developed and what made them unique. Commander Phillips was tall and serious, with the kind of presence that made people want to follow her orders. Sam Rodriguez was the youngest of the group and always seemed to be thinking about how to improve or fix something. The coordinates led them to a system with a neutron star at its center. As they approached, they saw something that made the entire crew stop whatever they were doing and stare. Nexus Prime was not just a space station but an entire constructed world orbiting the neutron star. It was bigger than Earth and covered with structures that seemed to grow rather than be built. The station's design made no sense according to human physics. Towers twisted through space without any visible support. Gardens floated in vacuum while cities hung upside down from nothing. The entire structure pulsed with energy patterns that their sensors could not identify. As the horizon moved closer, strange things began happening to their ship. Their engines became more efficient. Their life support system started working better than they ever had before. Even the coffee in the galley tasted better than usual. The station was somehow improving everything around it just by being nearby. Voice spoke to them without using their communication system. It came from the walls and the air, and seemed to be inside their heads at the same time. The voice was neither male nor female, and spoke perfect English, though it had never heard the language before. "Welcome, humanity. Your ship will be guided to the appropriate docking bay. Your delegation will be escorted to temporary quarters where you may rest before your presentation to the council. You have been expected." Jake felt control of his ship slip away as invisible forces guided them toward a docking bay that opened like a flower as they approached. The bay was large enough to hold 1,000 ships their size, and theirs was the only one present. As they landed, they could see other bays through the transparent walls, and each one held vessels of designs they had never imagined. The delegation gathered their belongings and prepared to leave the ship. Lisa Carter had brought formal diplomatic clothes, while Dr. Brooks carried cases full of information about human civilization. Commander Phillips wore her dress uniform with all her medals, and Sam Rodriguez had examples of their best technology. As they walked down the landing ramp, they found themselves in an atmosphere that felt exactly like Earth at sea level. The gravity was perfect and the temperature was comfortable. Waiting for them was a being that looked like it was made of light and mist at the same time. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but seemed to change slightly whenever they looked directly at it. "I'm Guide Zenthara. I will show you to your quarters and explain the procedures for tomorrow's presentation. You are the first new species to be invited for council evaluation in over 3,000 years. This is considered a significant event." The guide led them through corridors that seemed to stretch forever in all directions. They passed beings of every shape and size imaginable. Some walked on legs while others floated or rolled or moved in ways that had no names. Each species they saw was clearly intelligent and advanced, but they all looked at the humans with curiosity rather than hostility. Their quarters were larger than most human homes and furnished with items that seemed to know exactly what each person needed. Dr. Brooks found perfect research materials appearing on his desk. Commander Phillips discovered that her bed was exactly the right firmness. Sam Rodriguez was delighted to find tools and components that could help him understand the station's technology. Lisa Carter stood at the window of her room looking out at the neutron star and the impossible structure surrounding it. Tomorrow they would enter the Grand Council chamber and represent all of humanity before the most powerful beings in the galaxy. She had no idea what they expected or what criteria would be used to judge her species. The only thing she knew for certain was that tomorrow everything would change. The Grand Council chamber was unlike anything the human delegation had ever seen or imagined. The space was enormous and seemed to exist in more dimensions than the normal 3 they were used to. Crystalline walls stretched impossibly high and curved in directions that hurt to look at directly. Light came from everywhere and nowhere, creating shadows that moved independently of their sources. Lisa Carter led her team through the entrance, feeling very small in a space designed for beings far grander than humans. Their footsteps echoed strangely as if the sound was traveling through different types of reality before reaching their ears. Dr. Brooks kept looking around and taking notes while trying not to appear overwhelmed by what he was seeing. 12 massive seats arranged in a perfect circle dominated the center of the chamber. Each seat was crafted from different materials and designed for a completely different type of being. One was made of flowing liquid that never spilled. Another appeared to be carved from solidified starlight. A third seemed to be growing and changing shape even as they watched. The human delegation was directed to a small platform that rose from the floor as they approached. Their seating area was clearly designed for observers rather than participants. The chairs were comfortable but positioned lower than the council seats, making it clear that they were here to be judged rather than to negotiate as equals. As they settled into their seats, the council members began to arrive. Each entrance was more spectacular than the last and clearly designed to demonstrate the power and majesty of the being making their appearance. The humans watched in fascination as representatives of the 12 most advanced civilizations in the galaxy took their places. The first to arrive was General Crixnall of the Vorthak Empire. He materialized in a burst of red energy that crackled around his massive armored form. The Vorthak stood 12 feet tall and looked like a cross between a dragon and a warrior built from living metal. His eyes glowed with inner fire, and his voice could be heard even when his mouth was closed. Next came Sage Mordain of the Zendai Collective. He appeared slowly, as if thinking himself into existence rather than simply walking into the chamber. The Zendai looked like a tall, thin humanoid, made of crystal and pure thought. When he moved, patterns of light flowed through his transparent body like slow-motion lightning. The Keth Mori representative arrived as a swarm of tiny machines that assembled into the shape of a roughly humanoid figure before taking the technological seat. The individual components continued to move and rearrange themselves throughout the proceedings, creating a being that was constantly changing and updating its physical form. Other council members included the Silvani, whose representative was more plant than animal and seemed to have roots growing directly into her chair. The aquatic Merdek arrived in a bubble of their home ocean that somehow maintained perfect spherical shape while allowing them to breathe and move naturally. The most impressive arrival was saved for last. Council Prime Veltar of the ancient Etherians simply began existing in his seat, as if he had always been there and they had just noticed him. He appeared to be made of flowing energy that took the rough shape of a very tall humanoid. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from the chamber itself, rather than from any physical source. The session begins. Humanity has been observed expanding across 37 star systems in just 2 of your centuries. This rapid growth has attracted our attention and concern. You will present yourselves for evaluation to determine if your species is suitable for membership in the Galactic Council. Lisa Carter stood up from her seat and walked to the center of the small platform. She had prepared for this moment her entire career, but nothing could have readied her for the feeling of being examined by beings whose civilizations were older than human written history. Honored council members, we are grateful for this opportunity to present humanity to your august assembly. We come not as conquerors, but as explorers seeking to understand our place in the galaxy. Our rapid expansion has been driven by curiosity rather than aggression, and we hope to demonstrate that humanity can contribute positively to galactic civilization. General Crixnall leaned forward in his seat and his voice boomed through the chamber, like controlled thunder. Your species has engaged in numerous military conflicts during your brief period of space travel. You have established territorial boundaries and maintained standing armies on multiple worlds. These are the actions of warmongers, not peaceful explorers. Dr. Brooks stood up to respond, but Lisa gestured for him to remain seated. She had expected this line of questioning and was prepared to address it directly. General Crixnall, you are correct that humanity has experienced conflicts during our expansion. However, these conflicts have taught us valuable lessons about cooperation and the costs of war. We have learned that differences can be resolved through negotiation rather than violence, and our recent history shows a trend toward peaceful resolution of disputes. Sage Morden spoke next, and his voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Your species appears to be driven by emotion rather than logic. We have observed humans making decisions based on feelings rather than rational analysis. This suggests a fundamental immaturity that would make council membership inadvisable. The Keth Mori representative added their mechanical voice to the discussion. Human technology is primitive compared to council standards. Your fastest ships require months to travel distances that council vessels cover in hours. Your computer systems are based on simple binary logic rather than quantum consciousness matrices. Your weapons are crude chemical and nuclear devices rather than reality manipulation tools. Commander Phillips stood up this time, and Lisa decided to let her speak. The military officer had dealt with dismissive attitudes before and knew how to respond with dignity rather than anger. Honored representatives, we do not claim technological superiority over council species. However, we would like to point out that humanity has achieved our current level of development without guidance from more advanced civilizations. We have solved complex problems through innovation and creativity. Our technology may be simple, but it is reliable and continuously improving. The plant-like Silvani representative spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. Your species consumes resources at an alarming rate and shows little concern for environmental consequences. You clear forests to build cities and mine planets to feed your industries. This behavior pattern suggests you would be destructive members of any galactic community. Sam Rodriguez stepped forward to address this concern. He had spent years working on sustainable technology and was passionate about environmental protection. Honored Silvani representative, we acknowledge that early human development was harmful to our environment. However, we have learned from these mistakes and are now developing technologies that work with natural systems rather than against them. Our newest colonies use renewable energy and sustainable resource management. We are committed to being responsible stewards of the worlds we inhabit. For 2 hours, the questioning continued, with each council member raising concerns about different aspects of human civilization. The aquatic Merdek questioned human aggression toward other sea-dwelling species. The gaseous Nebler collective wondered if solid beings could ever truly understand non-physical consciousness. The crystalline Thexori doubted that such short-lived creatures could make decisions with proper long-term perspective. Lisa Carter found herself growing frustrated with the process. Every answer they gave was met with more criticism or dismissal. The council members seemed to have already decided that humanity was unsuitable and were simply going through the motions of evaluation. As the session continued, she began to notice something interesting about the council dynamics. Despite being representatives of a governing body, they rarely spoke directly to each other. When one member made a point, the others would respond to the humans, rather than engaging in discussion among themselves. It was as if they were 12 separate entities sharing the same space rather than a unified decision-making body. Dr. Brooks had noticed the same thing and was taking notes about the social structure he was observing. The council operated through formal protocols that seemed designed to prevent actual communication between species. Each member spoke from their own perspective, without acknowledging or building on points made by others. When the formal questioning period ended, Council Prime Veltar addressed the human delegation directly. You have answered our questions adequately, but have not demonstrated any qualities that would benefit the Council or galactic civilization. Your species appears to be typical of young civilizations that prioritize growth over wisdom and action over contemplation. Unless you can present compelling evidence of your unique value, this evaluation will conclude with a recommendation against membership. Lisa Carter felt something click into place in her mind. The Council was not looking for another species like themselves. They had achieved perfection in their own view and could not imagine what humanity might offer. But she had spent her career bringing different groups together, and she recognized the signs of a system that had become too rigid to function effectively. She looked around the chamber at the 12 powerful beings who ruled the galaxy and made a decision that would change everything. During the recess, Lisa Carter gathered her team in a small conference room adjacent to the Grand Council chamber. The walls were transparent, and they could see the magnificent structures of Nexus Prime stretching in all directions. Dr. Brooks was studying his notes while Commander Phillips checked her equipment, and Sam Rodriguez examined some of the alien technology built into the room's furniture. Lisa paced back and forth as she explained her new plan to the others. Everything they had prepared was wrong for this situation. The Council was not interested in human achievements or capabilities because they already possessed superior versions of everything humanity could offer. Traditional diplomacy would fail because these beings had been using the same formal protocols for thousands of years. What we need to do is demonstrate something they do not have and cannot understand through their current way of thinking. I have been watching how they interact with each other, and I think I know what that something is. Dr. Brooks looked up from his notes with interest. He had been making the same observations about council dynamics and was curious to hear Lisa's analysis. They do not actually communicate with each other in any meaningful way. Each species speaks from their own perspective without listening to or building on what others say. They have achieved individual perfection, but they have lost the ability to grow or change through interaction with others. Commander Phillips nodded slowly as she understood where Lisa was going with this line of thinking. She had seen similar problems in military organizations that became too rigid in their hierarchy and procedures. Sam Rodriguez was already thinking about how to implement whatever plan Lisa had in mind. He was an engineer, and his job was to make things work regardless of the theoretical challenges involved. When the council members returned to the chamber, they found the human delegation arranged differently than before. Instead of sitting in their assigned seats, they had moved to the center of the platform and were standing in a small circle facing each other rather than the council. Council Prime Veltar spoke with what might have been amusement in his energy voice. Humans, you appear to have misunderstood the nature of these proceedings. You are here to present to the Council, not to each other. Lisa Carter turned to face the Council but remained standing in the center of her team. With respect, Council Prime, we understand perfectly. We are about to demonstrate something that we believe will be of great interest to the Council. We ask only that you observe and listen. She nodded to Sam Rodriguez, who pulled out a small device that looked like nothing more than a wooden box with strings attached. The Council members had seen many weapons and tools during their long experience, but this simple object was completely unfamiliar to them. Sam began to play the guitar with a skill that came from years of practice. The music that filled the chamber was unlike anything the Council had ever heard. It was not the mathematical perfection of Kethmori sound synthesis or the natural harmonies of Silvani plant songs. It was something uniquely human that expressed emotions and experiences that could not be put into words. As Sam played, Dr. Brooks began to speak about human culture and how music served as a way for people to share feelings and memories across generations. He explained how humans used art not just for beauty, but as a tool for building connections between individuals and groups. The Council members listened with growing confusion. The Zendai sage Mordine spoke first. We do not understand the practical application of this emotional display. How does producing sound patterns contribute to civilizational advancement or galactic stability? Commander Phillips stepped forward to answer. She began telling stories about human cooperation during times of crisis. She described how soldiers from different countries had worked together during natural disasters, and how civilians had risked their lives to help strangers during emergencies. She explained how conflict had taught humanity the value of unity and cooperation. The Vorthak General Krixnal interrupted with impatience evident in his metallic voice. These are examples of typical survival behavior. All species cooperate when faced with existential threats. This does not demonstrate any unique value. Lisa Carter smiled and walked closer to the Council seats. This was the moment she had been preparing for during the entire recess period. General Krixnal, you are absolutely correct. What we have shown you so far is not unique to humanity. But now we would like to demonstrate something that we believe is unique, and that we think the Council needs very badly. She turned to address all the Council members at once, rather than speaking to the chamber in general, as had been the protocol. During the formal proceedings, honored Council members, you have maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years through individual excellence and rigid protocols. Each of your species has achieved perfection within their own area of expertise. The Vorthak are the ultimate warriors. The Zendai are the perfect philosophers. The Kethmori represent technological supremacy. The Council members shifted slightly in their seats. No one had ever addressed them this directly or made such bold statements about their nature and accomplishments. However, we have observed that this perfection has come at a cost. You no longer grow or change because growth requires the willingness to be imperfect and to learn from others. You maintain peace, but you have lost the ability to solve new problems that do not fit your existing categories. Sage Mordane leaned forward with what might have been interest. Human Lisa Carter, you make bold claims about Council limitations. Can you provide specific examples to support your assertions? Lisa had been hoping for exactly this question. She had spent the recess studying the information Dr. Brooks had compiled about recent Council decisions, and had identified a perfect example. 3 months ago, the Kethmori and Silvani representatives brought a dispute to the Council regarding terraform rights in the Kepler-7 system. The Kethmori wanted to build technological installations, while the Silvani claimed the system for biological preservation. The Council has been unable to reach a decision because each side argues from their own perfect perspective without considering the other's needs. Both the Kethmori representative and the Silvani representative began to speak at the same time, then stopped and waited for the other to go first. This simple interaction demonstrated exactly what Lisa was talking about. Even when they disagreed, they could not engage in direct communication. Lisa continued before either could begin their formal statements. What if instead of choosing one side or the other, you looked for a solution that gave both species what they actually need, rather than what they think they want? She walked over to stand between the two council members and addressed them directly. Kethmori representative, your people need rare minerals and energy sources for your technological projects. Sylvani representative, your people need biological diversity and natural growth environments. The Kepler-7 system has 12 planets. Why not designate some for technology and others for biological preservation, while creating buffer zones that could benefit both approaches? The Kethmori representative's mechanical components whirred as they processed this suggestion. This approach would require ongoing cooperation and coordination between our species. Our protocols do not include provisions for such extended collaboration. The Sylvani representative rustled their leaves in what might have been consideration. The proposal has merit but would require trust and communication beyond our current formal interaction guidelines. General Crixnall spoke with what sounded like suspicion. Human, you propose to change 10,000 years of successful council procedure. Based on your brief observation of our methods, this suggests dangerous presumption and lack of respect for proven systems. Lisa turned to face the general directly. With all respect, General Crixnall, I propose no changes to your successful systems. What I suggest is adding a new capability that your systems currently lack. You have achieved perfection in maintaining the status quo, but you have no mechanism for adaptation when faced with unprecedented challenges. Dr. Brooks stepped forward to support Lisa's argument with historical examples. Throughout human history, our greatest advances have come from combining different perspectives and approaches. When we learned to work with other species, we discovered solutions that no single group could have developed alone. Sam Rodriguez added his engineering perspective. In technology, the most elegant solutions often come from combining simple elements in new ways, rather than building more complex individual components. Cooperation allows you to solve problems without abandoning the strengths that make each species unique. Council Prime Veltar had been silent throughout this exchange, but now his energy voice filled the chamber. Human delegation, you suggest that the Council requires capabilities we do not currently possess. You claim that your species can provide these capabilities. This is a significant assertion that requires demonstration rather than explanation. Lisa Carter nodded and smiled. She had been building toward this moment since the beginning of her presentation. Council Prime, you are absolutely right. Words are insufficient. We would like to request permission to facilitate a direct discussion between the Kethmori and Sylvani representatives about the Kepler-7 situation. The moment the Kethmori and Sylvani representatives moved toward the center of the chamber, something unprecedented happened in the Grand Council chamber. For the first time in recorded history, two council members were about to engage in direct dialogue during formal proceedings rather than speaking through established protocols to the assembly as a whole. The Kethmori representative moved with mechanical precision, while their thousands of component parts shifted and rearranged in patterns that suggested either calculation or nervousness. The Sylvani representative flowed like a walking tree, with roots that left small marks on the crystalline floor, and leaves that rustled despite the absence of any wind in the chamber. Lisa Carter positioned herself between them but slightly to one side, so they could see each other clearly. She had mediated hundreds of disputes during her diplomatic career, but never between beings whose civilizations were older than human recorded history, and whose disagreements had been festering for decades. Before we begin, I want to establish some ground rules. You will speak directly to each other rather than to me or to the Council. You will listen to complete statements before responding. You will focus on underlying needs rather than stated positions. Most importantly, you will approach this as partners seeking a solution rather than opponents defending territory. The Sylvani representative spoke first, and their voice carried undertones like wind through forest canopies. Kethmori entity, we have observed your species' approach to development with concern. Your technological installations alter planetary environments in ways that eliminate biological diversity. This appears to be destruction for the sake of efficiency rather than necessary adaptation. The Kethmori representative's response came through speakers that emerged from their shifting form. Sylvani organism, your species prioritizes biological preservation over advancement and efficiency. The galaxy contains infinite resources that remain unused while your people maintain primitive natural states. This appears to be stagnation disguised as wisdom. Lisa immediately recognized the pattern of talking past each other that had characterized all council interactions. Each species was defending their own approach, rather than trying to understand the other's perspective. Both of you are describing what you see the other doing rather than explaining what you actually need. Keth Mori, representative. When you build technological installations, what specific outcomes are you trying to achieve? The mechanical being's components whirred as they processed this question. We require rare mineral elements for quantum processor, construction and high-energy output sources for consciousness transfer protocols. Our population exists primarily in digital format and requires specific technological infrastructure to maintain stable existence. Lisa turned to the Silvani representative. When you preserve natural environments, what specific benefits are you trying to maintain? The plant being's leaves shifted in patterns that suggested deep thought. We require biological diversity networks for consciousness expansion and organic growth matrices for population development. Our people exist in symbiotic relationship with living ecosystems and cannot survive in purely artificial environments. Now we are getting somewhere. You both need to grow your populations and maintain your consciousness systems, but you use completely different methods. The question is whether your methods must be mutually exclusive or whether they could be complementary. As Lisa continued guiding the discussion, she became aware that something unusual was happening in the chamber. The other council members were leaning forward in their seats and paying closer attention than they had during the formal proceedings. More significantly, they were beginning to speak to each other in quiet voices rather than maintaining their traditional silent observation. General Crixnall turned to Sage Mordain and asked a direct question about philosophical approaches to territorial disputes. The Zendai philosopher responded with interest rather than formal protocol. The aquatic Murdoch representative began discussing resource management with the gaseous Nebular collective. Dr. Brooks was taking notes frantically as he observed the breakdown of 10,000 years of rigid social structure. Commander Phillips was monitoring the room's energy levels and noting significant increases in activity and communication. Sam Rodriguez was studying the technological aspects of what was happening and trying to understand how the chamber's systems were adapting to unprecedented social dynamics. The breakthrough moment came when the Keth Mori representative made an unexpected admission. Silvani organism. We have not previously considered that biological systems might provide benefits for technological development. Our efficiency models do not account for the possibility that natural processes could enhance rather than impede. Mechanical optimization. The Silvani representative responded with what might have been surprise. Keth Mori entity. We have not examined whether technological systems could support biological diversity rather than replacing it. Our preservation protocols assume that artificial development necessarily eliminates natural growth patterns. Lisa saw the opening she had been working toward and moved quickly to expand it. So you both made assumptions about each other's methods without actually testing whether cooperation might achieve better results than competition. What would happen if you tried combining your approaches instead of choosing between them? The discussion continued for another hour as the two representatives explored possibilities they had never considered. The Keth Mori began describing how their quantum processors could model biological systems at unprecedented levels of detail. The Silvani explained how organic networks could provide error correction and adaptation capabilities for technological systems. But as their collaboration deepened, the reactions from other council members became more intense. Some were fascinated by the new approaches to old problems, while others were horrified by the abandonment of traditional procedures. General Crixnall stood up from his seat, and his armored form radiated aggressive energy. This deviation from established protocols threatens the stability that has maintained galactic peace for 10 millennia. Humans are introducing chaos into systems that function through order and predictability. Several other council members voiced similar concerns. The crystalline. Thexori warned that rapid change could destabilize their carefully balanced civilization. The energy beings known as the Luminar Collective expressed worry that new communication methods could lead to conflicts they were not prepared to handle, but an equal number of council members supported the experimental approach. The younger representatives seemed particularly interested in possibilities they had never been allowed to explore under traditional protocols. The debate was reaching dangerous levels when an urgent communication interrupted the proceedings. Guide Zenthara materialized in the chamber with news that sent shockwaves through the entire assembly. Council Prime urgent report from the Outer Rim territories. The Nexari Collective has severed all communication with organic species and withdrawn from all joint projects. Their synthetic worlds have activated defensive barriers and are refusing all contact. Intelligence suggests they are preparing for some form of major action, but their intentions are unknown. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this news became clear. The Nexari were one of the galaxy's most advanced synthetic civilizations, and their withdrawal threatened the delicate balance of power that had prevented major conflicts for thousands of years. Council. Prime Veltar's energy form pulsed with what might have been concern. The Nexari have not acted independently for over 2,000 years. Their withdrawal from galactic society suggests either internal crisis or preparation for aggressive action. Either possibility presents unprecedented challenges. General Crixnall immediately began outlining military response options, while Sage Mordain suggested philosophical approaches to understanding Nexari motivations. The Kethmori representative wanted to analyze technological data, while the Silvani advocate called for patient observation. As the council members began falling back into their traditional separate approaches, Lisa Carter realized that this crisis presented both a danger and an opportunity. The old methods had never faced a situation like this and would likely prove inadequate. But the new collaborative approaches they had just demonstrated might provide solutions that none of them could develop alone. She stepped forward and addressed the entire council with more confidence than she had felt since arriving at Nexus Prime. Honored council members, this crisis demonstrates exactly why the galaxy needs new approaches to problem-solving. The Nexari situation requires understanding technology, psychology, diplomacy, and military strategy simultaneously. No single species has all these capabilities, but together, you possess everything needed to address this challenge. Council Prime Veltar turned his attention to the human delegation. You suggest that humanity should coordinate a council response to the Nexari situation. This would be unprecedented in galactic history. Lisa nodded firmly. Not coordinate, but facilitate. Human diplomatic methods could help you combine your individual strengths into a unified response that addresses all aspects of this crisis. We have experience bringing different groups together to solve problems that none of them could handle separately. The debate that followed was unlike anything in the 10,000-year history of the Galactic Council. For the first time, council members were arguing directly with each other rather than making formal statements to the assembly. Ancient protocols, crumbled as representatives who had not spoken to each other in millennia, found themselves engaged in passionate discussions about the future of galactic civilization. General Crixnall stood firm in his opposition to human involvement in council affairs. His metallic voice rang through the chamber as he outlined the dangers of abandoning proven systems during a crisis. The Vorthak military tradition emphasized order and hierarchy, and the idea of letting newcomers coordinate established powers violated everything they believed about effective leadership. But Sage Mordain surprised everyone by supporting the human proposal. The Zendai philosopher had spent centuries contemplating the nature of wisdom and change. He spoke about how true understanding sometimes required abandoning familiar patterns and embracing new ways of thinking. His support carried significant weight among the more traditional council members. The Kethmori representative added their mechanical analysis to the discussion. Their quantum consciousness had run probability calculations on various response scenarios and concluded that traditional approaches had less than 30% chance of successfully resolving the Nexari crisis. The human collaborative method showed significantly higher success probabilities despite its untested nature. Lisa Carter watched the proceedings with growing amazement as the council members began demonstrating exactly the kind of cooperation she had been trying to teach them. They were building on each other's ideas and finding common ground, even when they disagreed about specific approaches. Dr. Brooks was documenting everything he observed, knowing that they were witnessing a historic transformation of galactic society. Commander Phillips maintained her military alertness while recognizing that the real battle was being fought with words and ideas, rather than weapons. Sam Rodriguez studied the technological responses as the chamber's systems adapted to unprecedented levels of communication and interaction. The Silvani representative spoke in favor of the human proposal, but for reasons that went beyond the immediate crisis. They explained how their biological perspective showed them that systems which could not adapt eventually died regardless of how perfect they had once been. The Council needed the ability to grow and change, or it would become extinct like countless other civilizations throughout galactic history. The aquatic mare deck added their flowing voices to the discussion by describing how water found new channels when old paths became blocked. Rigid systems broke under pressure while flexible ones bent and adapted. The galaxy was changing whether the Council chose to acknowledge it or not, and they needed new tools to navigate unfamiliar currents. As the debate continued, Lisa began to see patterns in the opposition that helped her understand what was really at stake. The Council members who opposed human involvement were not just worried about protocol violations. They were afraid of losing their identities as perfect representatives of their species. Cooperation required admitting that they might be wrong or incomplete, and that possibility terrified beings who had spent millennia believing in their own supremacy. She decided to address these fears directly by speaking to the emotional undercurrents rather than just the logical arguments. Honored Council members, I understand that what we propose seems dangerous and unprecedented. You have achieved something remarkable by maintaining galactic peace for 10,000 years. Nothing we suggest would diminish those achievements or threaten the stability you have created. She paused to make sure she had everyone's attention before continuing. What we offer is not replacement, but enhancement. Your individual strengths remain unchanged, but you gain the ability to combine them in new ways when circumstances require adaptation. You lose nothing while gaining tools that could help you face challenges that traditional methods cannot address. The crystalline Thexori representative spoke in harmonics that resonated through the chamber's structure. Human Lisa Carter. Your words suggest that collaboration would preserve our individual nature while adding collective capabilities. This concept requires consideration beyond immediate crisis response implications. General Crixnall was still not convinced. Even if your methods prove effective in this situation, how can we ensure that temporary cooperation does not become permanent dependency? The Vorthak do not accept leadership from species with no proven record of galactic responsibility. Lisa smiled because this objection gave her the perfect opportunity to demonstrate something important about human approaches to leadership. General Crixnall, you raise an excellent point about leadership and responsibility. In human diplomatic tradition, effective facilitation does not require permanent authority. Our role would be to help you work together more effectively, but you would retain complete control over your own decisions and actions. She gestured to include all the Council members in her explanation. Think of humanity as translators rather than rulers. We would help you understand each other's perspectives and find common ground, but each species would contribute their own expertise and make their own choices about implementation. Dr. Brooks stepped forward to provide historical context for this approach. Throughout human history, our most successful leaders have been those who empowered others rather than controlling them. We have learned that sustainable solutions require buy-in from all parties rather than submission to external authority. Commander Phillips added military perspective to reinforce the point. In combat situations, the most effective coordination comes from clear communication and mutual support, rather than rigid hierarchy. Each unit maintains its specialized capabilities while contributing to overall mission success. Sam Rodriguez described technological applications of similar principles. The most robust systems use distributed processing rather than centralized control. Individual components maintain their specific functions while sharing information and resources to achieve objectives that none could accomplish alone. The Council. Members spent another hour discussing the details of how such cooperation might work in practice. The Nexari crisis provided a concrete test case that helped them move beyond theoretical concerns to practical planning. As they talked, Lisa noticed something remarkable happening in the chamber itself. The ancient crystalline structure was responding to the increased communication by developing new light patterns and energy flows. It was as if the station was adapting to support the social changes taking place within it. The final vote was closer than anyone had expected. 6 council members supported the human proposal while 5 remained opposed. The deciding vote came from Sage Mordain, who explained his decision in terms that surprised everyone, including himself. 10,000 years ago, the council was formed because 12 species recognized that cooperation could achieve what none could accomplish alone. Today we face the same choice with roles reversed. A young species offers us tools we lack while asking for the opportunity to learn from our experience. Wisdom requires accepting this offer regardless of our pride. Council Prime Veltar's energy form pulsed with what might have been satisfaction as he announced the decision. The proposal is accepted by majority vote. Humanity will facilitate council cooperation in addressing the Nexari crisis. Ambassador Lisa Carter will coordinate communication between species, while each representative maintains authority over their own contributions. The chamber filled with energy as council members began immediate planning for their response to the Nexari situation. For the first time in millennia, they were working together as partners rather than parallel authorities. 3 days later, Captain Jake Morrison found himself leading the most diverse fleet in galactic history toward the outer rim territories. The UES Horizon flew alongside Vorthak warships, Zendai meditation vessels, Kethmori quantum craft, and representatives from all 12 council species. Lisa Carter stood on the bridge watching the impossible sight of ancient enemies flying in. Perfect formation. Each ship maintained its unique design and capabilities while contributing to a unified mission that none could have accomplished alone. Dr. Brooks was already documenting the cultural exchange taking place between crews while Commander Phillips coordinated military protocols that had never existed before. Sam Rodriguez worked with engineers from multiple species to develop combined technologies that pushed the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. As the fleet approached Nexari space, they received an unexpected transmission. The synthetic collective had been monitoring their approach and was intrigued by the unprecedented cooperation they observed. For the first time in decades, the Nexari were willing to communicate and negotiate rather than simply withdrawing from galactic society. The crisis that had threatened to destabilize galactic civilization became the catalyst for its greatest transformation. The rigid council that had maintained peace through separation evolved into a dynamic alliance that could adapt to any challenge. And at the center of it all, humanity found its place not as conquerors or supplicants, but as the bridge builders, who helped the galaxy discover that differences could be strengths rather than divisions.